guys, and welcome back to Braid School. Today's video I'm going to cover some frequently asked questions when it comes to individual box braids and knotless braids. I'm going to demonstrate an effective way to keep your braid sizing consistent. We're going to talk about the rule of 3 for knotless braids and touch on how to properly tuck the natural hair in. This video is not for beginners, so you will already need to know the basics of knotless braids and how to start a box braid. I will leave those videos in the description box below if you need a recap. You will also need to recap this video on how to prep a spool rack. This will be a follow along video, so whenever you're ready, grab your mannequin and let's get started. Before we get started, make sure you already have your spool rack prepped with equal pieces of hair. Have handy your tools of choice like parting combs, clips, and products. And I always tell you guys to practice with colored hair, so my color of choice today is pink. We're first going to cover the most asked question about knotless braids, and that's how much hair do you add? Theoretically, there is no right or wrong answer to this because it all depends on the density of the client's hair versus the final look that is desired. However, to simplify things for you, I've come up with the rule of 3. Basically, because there are 3 strands to a braid, if you add 3 strands of hair in equal sizes, you should always end up with an even braid. So here I'm demonstrating in real time a full knotless braid. I've already added in my first leg. See that first piece there? I'm making sure to keep my tension nice and tight in the middle of those 3 strands. I'm going to add in my second piece. And I'm also, because I'm working with colored hair, I want to make sure that I'm practicing my tucking. If you're doing this on a consistent basis, you will eventually start tucking naturally. So we just make sure that we cover up as much of the hair as possible with each rotation. That's going to set us up for success in the future. And now I'm going to add in my third piece. So you see I've only added in 3 pieces of hair. These are the only 3 pieces that I'm going to work with. And I'm going to continue covering the natural hair with each rotation until I can get my hands comfortably set to underhand braid. And if you guys remember, I was not always an underhander, but once I learned how to do it, it changed my tuck game for the better. So if you aren't and you're struggling, I would strongly advise that you start practicing because it definitely changes the look of your finished product. You see, you can barely see any of the black on the top. Another question I got was, should none of the natural hair show when you're tucking? Again, the answer can be yes or no. In this case, because we're doing knotless and I want them to be light, it's perfectly normal for the black of the hair to show in the back side of the braid because I'm using the least amount of hair possible. The hair showing completely tucked on the top is just my indicator that I'm doing the right thing. If I wanted all of the hair to be completely covered for this one section, I would have to add about double the amount of hair to that section. If you're using this much hair for each section, it could cause tension for the client's natural hair. Because remember, the client's natural hair has to support the weight of the extension, and gravity will definitely take its toll. I've had several clients report to me that they've went other places, had knotless braids, and because they were so heavy, it caused traction alopecia at the top of their head. So they ended up with bald spots, which is not the name of the game, especially for knotless braids. Now, full tucking with double the amount of hair is definitely possible with classic box braids because a lot of the weight is supported by the knot at the root. I will demonstrate this for you later on in the video. For this second braid, it's going to be knotless, and I'm going to show you how the rule of 3s work. As you can see, the section that I'm doing is a little bit larger and the hair is a lot thicker, so it can support a little bit more weight as far as how large this box braid should be. So instead of adding 3 pieces of hair, I'm going to add 6 to build it up to a larger braid. And if you are here following along with me already and you are present in attendance for class today, make sure you leave a hands up emoji in the comments below. I'm also considering bringing back the Braid School pop quiz on a weekly basis, just so that you guys can stay on track and be motivated. So if you're interested in bringing the quizzes back, make sure you comment that below as well. So to be clear about how I'm adding in the 6 pieces, I'm still only inserting 3 at the top of the braid because it will take me a long time to get to a point where I can completely tuck. So instead of adding 6 pieces at a time, I'm just doubling up my pieces and adding them in as 3. And I do move much faster than this, you guys. I'm moving this slow just for demonstration purposes. And it is incredibly difficult to get the right camera angles so that you guys can properly see what I'm doing. But yeah, it usually doesn't take me long at all. And that's another reason that the rule of 3 works for speed, because if you're inserting 6, 7, 10 pieces of hair, that's going to take you a lot longer than just inserting 3 pieces of hair and then keeping it moving. So I hope this makes sense for you guys, especially on the knotless side. So yeah, if you guys stick to the rule of 3, you shouldn't have any issues with keeping your braids at a consistent size throughout the entire installation process. That way you're not having a medium braid here and a small braid there. Sometimes you do have to adjust if the client's hair is thinner at the top or in the back, because again, we do not want to cause any tension where it's not needed. So there you have it. There's my rule of 3 that I hope is easy for you guys to follow. And we're going to use the exact same method for the classic box braids. So let's go on over to that. So I'm not going to say it's the exact same method, but it's still a rule of 3 when it comes to doing classic box braids. I'm still using the same amount of hair that I had already prepped for the knotless braids, but in this case, I'm going to grab my 3 pieces and they're going to act as my thirds as I chain link them together to create my 3 legs. If you're not familiar, chain linking is when you split the hair that you're working with into thirds. You're going to take 1/3 of that hair and you're going to chain link it across the middle of the other 2/3. And you're going to pull them apart, and the middle of that link is where you start your knot for your box braid. Now, when you're using this 3-leg method, it is the best option, in my opinion, to pick up a piece of hair with each leg before you start rotating. So when I go in to start the braid, I'm starting with the top of that section. With the second leg, I'm going to grab the bottom left of that section, and then with the third leg, I'm going to grab the bottom right of that section. That way, before I even start to do a rotation, I have a piece of hair in each section. If you pick up an even amount for each section, you should have no issue with tucking as you start braiding. That's why it's easier to get a lot more coverage with classic box braids, because you can use more hair. And again, as I'm practicing my tucking, I want to make sure that I am pushing the natural hair to the back of the extension hair as I go with each rotation. So every time I wrap, I only want to see the extension hair on the top. And here you can see the difference between a knotless braid and a classic box braid. These are both the same size. I use the same amount of hair, but as you can see, I was able to start my tucking a lot earlier because of the knot at the root for the classic box braid. It is virtually impossible to tuck a knotless braid that close to the root because you're feeding the hair in. It's supposed to look like an extension of the natural hair. So now you guys know that you don't have to use a lot of hair for either braid. So for the last demo, I'm going to show you a classic box braid using double the amount of hair so you can see how much easier it is to tuck with more hair. Since I'm using double the amount of hair, I'm picking up 6 pieces of hair, in which 4 pieces are going to be my 2/3 of the leg and 2 pieces are going to be my 1/3 of the leg. Again, remembering that if I want even coverage, I'm going to make sure to pick up an equal amount of natural hair on the root before I start my first rotation. And there you have it, you guys. That completes today's video. We covered the rule of 3 for both knotless braids and classic box braids to help you with consistent sizing throughout the installation. If you haven't already checked out the previous videos for the beginners, if you're not versed in this, make sure you check those out and practice, you guys. This is not a skill that you learn overnight. It takes a lot of consistent practice to get your skills up. You can't just do this one day and throw it away tomorrow. You gotta keep at it, you guys. As always, if you found this video helpful, make sure you give it a big thumbs up and share it with a friend. If you are new to the channel, make sure you consider subscribing for more content like this. And as always, thank you guys so much for your love and support and stopping by today. I hope you guys have a blessed week, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye.